Mandy Arnott, welcome to the Thought Lab podcast.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here. We've been chatting for a while now to try and get you on the podcast, and I know how busy you are, so thank you very much for taking the time to come through at our home, my first time here at our home,
Yes.
and be on the podcast. We've known each other for many years.
Many.
Many years. I think the first time I met you, your daughter Lee had gone to standard 6, and that's where I met her. So I must have been 14,
Sure.
14 years old, 13 or 14.
That's when I started studying again.
That's when you started studying again. Correct. So you are, and I was mistaken, I was actually under the impression that you were a clinical psychologist, but you're actually an educational psychologist.
And a speech therapist, an audiologist, and teacher.
Okay, wait. So say that again. Educational
I'm also a
psychologist.
speech therapist,
Yeah.
and an audiologist, and a teacher. I've qualified as a teacher.
Oh, wow. Why on earth would you, I understand the psychology side, but why on earth would you go into the teaching side?
Well, I started as a speech therapist first. That was my primary degree, and majored in psychology. And that's when I loved psychology, and I knew I was going to get back to it.
Okay.
And then when Lee went to high school, I picked up on the psychology and I started studying further. The teaching side, I had to do a teacher's diploma because I was working for the education department.
Okay.
And one of their requirements was a teacher's diploma.
Okay.
So then I had to do that. That was my first part-time study.
All right. And before you got into the studying and the psychology and the teaching, was it always teaching? Was that always your passion?
The speech therapy,
The speech therapy.
because that's where I started, and that's what I worked for all the years as a speech therapist
Okay.
at various education department clinics.
I've got you. I've got
Yes.
you. I've got you. Okay, wow. Question. Do you think that every single psychologist is crazy to begin with? And that's why they get into psychology.
Well, a lot of research has shown that, yes. It's some of the greatest writers have
Yeah.
had serious
Yeah.
psychological problems.
But I mean, if you look
But
at
I think it's a lot to do with really being interested in people and
Yes.
interested in how the brain works and how people work. And I think that just gives one the insight into people, into life,
Yeah.
into everything.
Well, I mean, I'm absolutely fascinated with the brain, and I'm fascinated with how I work, and it's because I'm so, well, I'd like to say remotely functional now, but it's because I was so dysfunctional when I was younger, and I had the typical case of ADD, OCD, insomnia, all the rest of it, and the teachers would say to me, you're going to amount to nothing, and you're going to be pathetic, and you're going to be this, and you're going to be that, and, or just didn't even give me the time of day because I was such a bloody lunatic. And I mean, I appreciate that, but that's when I sat down and said, well, why am I different?
Yes.
Why can somebody focus for 2 hours on something and I can't? What really is the differences? And that got me into the brain and the neuropsychology and the molecular biology and everything sort of that I've pursued since, not educationally, but more autodidactically, more for self-study. But if you look at some of the greatest, I mean, Jung was a complete lunatic.
Mm-hmm.
An absolute lunatic.
But you need the lunatics to make people wake up
Agreed.
and
Agreed.
have their passion and follow through on the passion.
I agree.
But Jung is one of the fathers of psychology. I mean, without Jung or Freud, we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
Although we laugh at a lot of their things now,
Sure.
but without them,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have had
They
this whole
basically set
field.
the foundation.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because before, people with mental problems, whatever they be, depression, ADHD,
Yeah.
OCD, were all locked up in asylums
Absolutely.
and treated horrendously.
Yeah. And pre that, I'm possibly called a witch and killed.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Or something
yes.
along those lines. Look, I have this thing that I say to people, everybody looks at the world now and goes, oh, especially South Africa. Oh my gosh, South Africa's so bad. And I've been listening to a lot of evolutionary psychologists, and I've been reading a lot of history lately. And we're actually in probably the most enlightened phase of the world that we've ever been, and we're probably the safest that we've ever been. And yes, South Africa has its criminal issues, and yes, the world has its crime issues, and it has its terrorists and all the rest of it. And I mean, largely dysfunctional. But if you take society as a whole, we're very enlightened, and we're very safe. If you take it back 100 years,
Yes. Yes.
Very much so. So all these crazy lunatics, I mean, they set the foundation for what we are today.
But I haven't got the quote on me. I had a quote from the Greek period of parents complaining about their children not behaving, being this, being that, being all these terrible things.
Same.
And I actually read it in a speech once, and all the parents nodded, and then I gave them the date of when it was written.
You're
so
joking.
It's time immemorial, yes.
Same problems.
Same problems.
Same problems.
Except we're more people.
Yes.
So it's more obvious now.
And I also think that, I think the problem is exacerbated nowadays, where I think for the first time in history, our tribes are being lost. And I think as a species, we developed as tribes, we developed as groups. And within these groups, you had multiple parents and multiple families, meaning uncles and aunts. And you grew up together, and the kids were brought up by the elders. And for the first time now, you have this massive disconnect where two parents, both are working. And I think there's a very big disconnect in my opinion. In family life today.
There isn't the family, not the microcosm family, or as you were talking about, the macrocosm.
Yeah.
There's a very big connect. You said two parents. That's also, I think, today very seldom.
Very seldom, yeah.
It's more one parent. And the parents, because both parents are working, and some of them leave before the kids are up in the morning, and they get back when the kids are sleeping at night, and I kind of query why they have children, but that is their their issue. And the children are growing up a lot on their own.
Yes.
And that's
Agreed.
where I feel we're letting them down in terms of education, because the teacher used to be the parent in loco.
Yeah,
but the classes are too big.
Agreed.
So they're not getting the teaching they need in the classrooms, because more is expected of the parents, and the parents haven't got the time to do it. So these kids are becoming very lost.
Yeah, agreed. And then you go, I mean, look, don't even get me started on the parenting side. If I was president of the world, you'd actually have to take an exam. Exactly. So I have to give financials, and I have to take an exam, and I have to pass a license to drive a car. I need none of that to bring a human being, an actual real life human being, into this world.
The first year I worked as a speech therapist, one of my areas was Langlaagte.
Okay.
And I worked at the children's home there. In that school, there were more special ed classes, which means classes for children with low IQs, than actual normal classes, your everyday classes. And I even went and did some parent visits, and that was scary, because the children in the children's home were actually far better off than the children in the environment.
Really?
And I'll never forget the one I had. The child was brought up in a cardboard box, and this was the 7th child. So he would sit in the cardboard box all day, and so he was out of the way. And I visited the one home. It was honestly the scariest thing I've done. The woman had hair down to her waist, grey streaked black hair, looking quite like a witch.
Okay.
And there was nothing in the house except an organ. And that was like her status symbol. Nobody could play it. Nobody could do anything. There was no food for the kids, but there was this organ.
Yeah.
And I came home then and said to my husband, just what you've said. I said, we've got to have a license for a dog to keep an animal, and these parents are breeding children. They've got no clue. No clue whatsoever what it actually means to have a child.
I couldn't agree more. It is probably, I mean, as you know, I'm 37, engaged. I have no kids, although I do have a Great Dane, and she's like my child, right? But it is probably the singular thing I'm the most afraid of in the world, is not having the child. Although I don't want kids, because I'm very selfish with my time and my money, right? But it's the responsibility, because that child will become what you make it. And very seldomly do children overcome their parental limitations. Baggage. There we go. Their parental baggage. Very, very seldomly can they step out of that. I mean, if you look
unless they're going for therapy.
Yeah.
And that's where I believe that everyone, before you get married, should go for therapy. to get rid
Marriage
of the
counselling.
baggage first.
Is that what you mean?
Just therapy,
just
to get to
therapy.
know who you are as a person
I couldn't agree more.
before you actually go into this relationship.
Yeah. You've obviously heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
Did you hear what happened recently? Mid last year, please don't quote me on that, but mid last year I was going through a couple of information, and apparently they found unpublished the last capstone of Maslow's needs of hierarchy that was unpublished after his death.
Yes.
And the last capstone was self-actualization,
Okay.
which is
I
exactly...
just always assumed that's where it led
That's where
to.
it led
So
to.
I didn't
But
actually...
yeah, but you would though, because you're a psychologist, you know, and that's the way you think. But it is actually that self-actualization. And I mean, when I do consulting, when I do training, I actually say to the guys, you need to sit and ask yourself who the hell you are. It's a very, very, very important questions. You know, in goal setting, I talk about creating a North Star, an ultimate
your North
North
Star.
Star goal, right?
Who wrote that book? Finding Your North Star.
I don't actually know. Is there a book?
Yes.
Okay, I must check it out. But
think
finding
of who
your
it
North
is
Star
now.
goal, and that is your overriding goal, that gets all your goals together in a general direction. And
Yes.
most people battle with even finding a North Star. And I say, well, finding your North Star starts with introspection, because it's based on your values and based on who you are as an individual and what you want to do in life, and value principles, you know, real big value principles. Most people don't even know what that is.
And that's all you can give your children.
Yeah.
You can give them love, education, and values.
Values. Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Just on what you were saying about finding yourself in Maslow, Eunice's big theory, because I studied the last part through Eunice, is what they call relationship theory.
Okay.
And what it's based on there, and this is why I feel we're having such a problem in our society today, is the first relationship a child establishes is with the parent, the
Yes.
mother figure.
Okay.
And so if that isn't a good relationship, everything after that isn't going to work. And then after that comes the relationship with the father, other adults,
Correct.
the family, as you were talking about, the tribe, the extended family, and then they go, and then you get siblings and peers that
Okay.
they establish the relationship with. And then when they go to school, it's what we call a relationship with objects. Now, if you're not valuing and the objects being your school books,
Okay.
your education,
All right.
so if you haven't had these others, you can't form that good relationship with schooling, because you can't form a
Relationships to
relationship
begin
with objects.
Shit, I've never thought about it that way.
And from the objects too, that is not overvaluing your material things, but respecting what you've got.
Correct.
And if you're looking at our society today, we don't have respect for property. We don't have respect for things or other people's things.
And
And
that's a
this-
result.
Of that first primary
Wow.
relationship. That is
That
what
makes
I
perfect
feel
sense to
is
me.
making a lot of why we have all the crime that we have.
Yeah.
Because there isn't that relationship with your own personal things.
Yeah.
And then after that, you form a relationship with God. And only once you've got all of those relationships in place can you form a relationship with self.
So we could say then, I would rather say then, form a relationship with whatever your spiritual superior is.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm saying God, but your spiritual
Yeah.
superior, whatever higher power you believe in.
Correct. Correct.
And then
How important do you think that is in terms of living a fulfilled life? What about somebody who is, for argument's sake, an atheist?
well, I think the trouble when you're an atheist, you're just looking at now. And maybe your relationship has been too great on things. And that is where you've stopped developing. You haven't developed further after that, because you're just busy with worldly stuff to get here. And I think it must be a very empty life, because if that's all, the here and now, where to after that?
Yeah.
So that's why
I'm
you've
with
got
you.
to put everything into here and now, because you believe there isn't anything else.
An afterlife.
An afterlife.
So I've got a very strange relationship with spirituality. I would refer to myself as an agnostic theist, which is I believe there's a God, but I don't believe we can know who that God is. That's basically the short translation of that. And I believe that because I don't believe that Christianity or Hindu or Muslim, I don't think that each one is exclusively right. I think they're all right.
They are all right.
To whatever degree.
That's where, when you said afterwards, a higher supreme being.
Yes.
Ultimately, everybody believes in a higher supreme being.
Yeah, but to whatever...
And it depends which path you're finding.
Correct.
To get there.
Correct.
Robin
100%.
always talks about a dandandelion. With all the different little...
Yeah.
But you're getting to that center. Everything
Absolutely.
comes from the center.
Yes.
Whether... and the scientists are really making a big contribution now in terms of a higher supreme being. Not calling it that, but you're looking at the scientific...
Yeah.
things that are happening today, and it's you've just got to
in
believe
quantum
there's a
physics, you've got
higher something.
Yeah, in quantum physics you've got the observer effect.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
And things get really, really, really strange. Spooky action at a distance. But my point is, I don't know whether or not there is an afterlife. I can live my life as if there is, or I can live my life as if there isn't. Even though I don't necessarily believe there's an afterlife, but I can still toss a coin and go 50-50, right? There is either is or there isn't, and those are 50-50 odds, and I like looking at odds. And I'm going, look, I'd rather live my life as if, okay? And I don't mean believe in a God. I mean do great things, help people, inspire people, give value.
I've just read another book that you're going to love, and also can't think who wrote it now, but it is a neuroscientist, a neurosurgeon who wrote the book. Your other pod interview you're going to do with Ian Wiseman, he's not altogether okay with this guy. But
Okay.
you can bring it. I'll
We'll
bring you
it
the
up.
book.
Yeah.
And he had people talking about out-of-body experiences and under surgery,
Yes.
and that they'd seen the white light. And he just always assumed it was something to do with the anesthetic
Yes.
and that state of the brain at that stage. And he developed a growth, a tumor, whatever, on a part of his brain, and he went into a coma. And he was gone.
I've heard of this book.
Okay.
Yes.
And the family
Continue, please.
were actually all around the bed because they were going to switch off the machines, because they said if he does live, he'll be a total vegetable. He sat up in bed, talked to them all. There was no tumor left. And his experience was, then the whole book talks about his experience going to the afterlife.
Oh, wow.
And he spoke about the music of the spheres, which is the Om, he said. And said the only question that he was asked is, what did you do for your fellow man?
Oh,
That's all they want to know.
really?
Were you good? Were you bad? What did you do wrong? Not interested.
Really?
But what did you do for your fellow man? And that is going back to what you said. That is our job here.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you do for your
I agree.
fellow man?
So when we sat and talked about the podcast, my saying to you was, and what I said to you was, I started it because I believe we can add some value, and I asked you to come and chat because I believe you can add some value.
Yes.
And that's it. Nothing more,
Okay,
nothing
just
less.
to go back to that book.
Yes.
What he said there was, he didn't want to come back, obviously, and because it was wonderful.
Okay.
And then they said he has to go back because as a scientist, his testimony will give value to that there is an afterlife.
Okay.
And then he wrote the book from his personal experience.
Yeah. My problem is, you know, and in this I think I'm always going to be a fence sitter until the day I die, is I haven't experienced it. So I have to recount and account what other people have to say about this as to whether there is or isn't an afterlife. You know, do I think there's something like reincarnation? Yeah, maybe. I like reincarnation more. I like the idea of coming back and hopefully have done.
But where
done
are you
enough
coming
to,
back from then?
Yes, perhaps. I don't
Yes.
know. I don't know. But I can't. It's not tangible. But I can live my life as if what I do in this life matters in the next.
What did you do for your fellow man?
Correct. Whether it does or doesn't is irrelevant, because I figure even if I die one day and my fervent hope is 4, 5, or 6 people turn around and go, he helped me change my life. Then I've done okay. Because not most people can't even say that for one person.
You know the starfish story?
Tell me the starfish story.
Love it. A man was up on a cliff and he looked down and saw something that seemed to be moving on the beach. And he walked down, there was a little boy there. And the tide had washed in all these starfish. And he was picking them up, throwing them into the water. And he said to him, "What are you doing?" So he said, "I'm throwing the starfish back into the water." He said, "But look at all of these starfish. How can you make a difference?" And he picked one up, he threw it into the water, and he said, "To that one, I made a difference."
I made a difference. Yeah. How beautiful. It is. If only
Okay,
more
to
people
go back
thought
to
that
the
way.
relationship,
Yes.
that we said with a higher being. Now, there's also been a lot of studies at UNISA in terms of, in the religious side. And with children, they started doing drawings as to how do you see your superior being.
Yes.
And what they found is that they drew pictures of God as the same as they drew their fathers, because that was their interpretation. Our Father in heaven, my Father on earth.
Okay.
And this is where your relationship with the superior being often comes from, because as you've got the relationship with your earthly father, that is what you assume it's going to be
Like with
in the
your
greater life.
Okay.
So if you've had a very loving father, this is how you see your supreme being. If you've had a very tyrannical, this is what you assume your spiritual being is. Because we want to concretize, as you said,
Yes.
you're 50-50.
Yeah.
And we can't concretize, we try to concretize what we don't know.
Of course.
And that is how they then perceive it.
Wow.
Which is also, and that goes again into that developing of the self-concept.
Yes. The self-actualization.
Yes.
What fascinates me is just how much we are actually formed in these formative years, and how much baggage we actually carry that we don't even realize we're carrying. I mean, I've often, Mandy, and I mean, you're the person I'd come to, but I've often thought to myself, maybe I must just come and speak to you just because I want to. Literally just because I'm curious. I'd love for you to tell me, Hans, you've got a real issue here, and maybe I do, maybe I can disagree, maybe we can argue. That's cool. I don't think that I have any serious mental issues. I'd like to believe that, right? Maybe you'd say otherwise.
No, but you've got to go back. There's not one single one on this earth
That
that
doesn't have some
hasn't
issues.
got,
Yeah.
because we go back to the baggage. So you're taking your parents' baggage onto you,
Yeah.
and where's their baggage coming from? Their parents.
parents.
And their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So you just take your parents. So you've got your father's baggage, you've got your mother's baggage. You're carrying both those.
Yeah.
Plus your own baggage.
Agreed.
And so unless
Let
you
alone
get
the
rid of that
baggage.
baggage somewhere,
Yeah.
you can't self-actualize. So I think going back to what you said in terms of I might have a lot of issues, the issues are our way of self-actualizing, because it's working through your issues that we become a self-actualized person.
What are your thoughts on, and this is way out there, and maybe you don't want to answer this, and I'm okay with that, but what are your thoughts on people using very sort of traditional medicinal aids to get there, such as ayahuasca or dimethyltryptamine or anything along those lines, basically using psychedelics to work out issues?
I've just, funny enough, this ayahuasca, I've just
Started reading about
met
it.
somebody that had been on it.
Oh, yes?
You might have known him
Okay.
from the academy, Gary Else.
Okay.
He's been on a few. And I was very interested when I spoke to him, and the way he experienced it and explained what came through,
Yeah.
that he was actually physically sick,
Yes.
but it was you
So-
actually purging yourself.
That's it. So the ayahuasca's got two components to it. It's got the plant itself, which is
Yes.
a purgatory,
Yes.
and you've got the dimethyltryptamine, which is the
Yes.
DMT. Now, the DMT is actually created in our body naturally. We create. They hypothesize that we create DMT 3 times, or 3 in categories. When we're born, naturally, when we reach a state of enlightenment through whatever period, that could even be a near-death experience, and when you die. So your body actually makes DMT naturally. And the problem is when you take DMT, if I had to take DMT synthetically, my body would recognize DMT and basically flush it out. So if I don't take DMT, 5 minutes, it's gone. Okay, and there's a very good book about this. It's called, written by Rick Strassman, called DMT, the Spirit Molecule.
Okay.
And when you do ayahuasca, though, the plant itself, there's a component in the plant that prolongs that and simultaneously acts as a purgatory. So you can run 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, depending on how much you take, hours in this experience, and then simultaneously you purge, you get rid of all this rubbish. I am fascinated with this. I'm shit scared of it. So I mean, it's not something I've ever done, but I have read everything I can get my hands on. And I mean, I've got good friends of mine, really good friends of mine, who do this and have had this experience. And
I think whatever works for you works for you. So that is an experience, but you're not taking those drugs as a daily way of life. It is used in a therapeutic, healing way. And I think if there's a benefit to it, I think if it's what's okay for you to benefit and self-actualize, to me, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I also read it and thought, oh, no, I couldn't go there.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting. I mean, the more you read about it, it's not something taken on lightly.
It works.
Yeah.
Yes, you've got to prepare yourself.
Correct.
You've got to fast before, cleanse your body,
Yeah.
all of that before you do it. So it's a whole experience, a whole process.
It's a whole process. And maybe it's not just that. Maybe it's the whole process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because in the process of fasting, you obviously cleansing your body and you're becoming more attuned to the real me.
Yeah. I do intermittent fasting and single day fasting. So sometimes other than water, I just won't eat anything until 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then that's called intermittent fasting. And then obviously longer fasting, day or 2 or 3 fasting. And it actually resets your cells. It's incredible what fasting does to you. It immediately puts you in a state of ketosis. And it's incredible what it does to you. So even that is adding to this experience. So on that note, mental health medication. What are your thoughts on mental health medication?
I think when it's necessary, it's necessary. Because with a lot of the mental health things, and you're looking at the depression, where it is a chemical imbalance. So you need to stabilize the chemical imbalance in the brain. And to stabilize that, I don't believe in the medication, just the medication, but I do believe in the medication then to stabilize, and then therapy to work through the issues, because the medication isn't going to cure the symptom.
Yes.
The medication is stabilizing so that you can work on the symptom.
So you use it as a stabilizer.
You use it as a stabilizer.
All right. Because I think it's just kind of given out. Let's take something like Ritalin, right, for ADD kids. Now, I've been truly ADD, and you know this. You can account for this. This isn't me going to, and maybe we can actually settle this now, because it's something I speak about a lot. But there are a lot of people who are ADD, and I say that in inverted commas, because it's easier for the teachers or the parents or the doctors to just give them something that controls them, versus kids who are seriously ADD. I mean, to the point where learning was an issue for me and always has been, unless I'm passionate about a subject, I can't read it, couldn't. I can now because I've become a lot more functional. But I think sometimes it's a cop-out. I think sometimes it's I'll just give it, it's easier. I know in America, it is ridiculous the amount of drugs, clinical drugs that are on there, very serious clinical drugs that are on there. And it's just become a society and a cultural thing now. I'm on this, I'm on that, I'm on that. And do you see that coming to South Africa? Do you see that same trend happening here?
I think we're using far more medication, yes. But I do think there are far more mental health issues now as well.
Why?
And because to go to that, a lot of the things are genetic. And you take ADHD, it's genetic.
Okay.
And you will find the family, a strain going through
the family.
Well, to go to my own family, my father was.
Okay.
And it was so funny because he lived with me for a long time. And I'd walk into the house and he'd be watching cricket or whatever, and he would just talk about whatever's happened. So all the thoughts going out. When I was there, these thoughts blurted out to me. I didn't know what he was on about, and I would just walk out again and hear him still talking in the background. But he was extremely distractible.
Yes.
And then, of course, my own son as well. And this is where my great interest in the ADHD came in.
Yes.
And
because you've almost specialized in it.
yes, I have. I did my master's thesis on ADHD. But so there you've got the genetic, and my son, I can see it in both his children. The one's internally distractible, and the other is both.
Quantify internal versus externally distractible.
Okay, external is things going on around you.
Yes.
So if while we're sitting here, there's a bird outside,
I see
you'll
what
hear
you're
it
saying.
and you'll glance.
I get you. Versus
So
internal.
anything that's going on around you, you're going to be extra aware of.
Okay.
Whereas if you're not externally, you cut it off. So you're not aware of some fridge or something just went on there.
Yes.
You cut that off. Now, if a child is sitting in a classroom that's externally distractible, if a child drops a pencil, he's going to be turning around.
Got you.
If someone's talking at the back, if someone walks past the class. So everything going on is bombarding that brain. And then it's the filter system that doesn't work. So he will hear the teacher take a story like Little Red Riding Hood. Okay, Little Red Riding, he hears, and someone coughing and a pencil dropping.
He hasn't
Wood.
heard.
And then all the other sounds, and then he might hear grandmother's house with a coughing and a sniffing and someone blowing their nose and everything else. So the story he's got is a few little words that he's now trying to integrate with all the other stuff going on around.
Okay.
And then the internal distractibility is going into your own thoughts. So now the teacher says wolf, and you're thinking of the story you read about a wolf, and then that wolf, and there were lots of others, and then I went to the zoo and I saw the wolf there, and then after I saw the wolf, I saw the elephant, and I saw...
yes.
So
association games?
Association.
Okay, so I'm internal.
I think you're a bit external too.
Okay, great. I'm both. No, because that's my issue. It's that chain of thoughts of reaction. If I'm reading something and somebody speaks to me, I don't even hear them.
No.
If I'm reading a book and my fiance walks in and speaks to me, we can have fights about this because I'm reading. I don't even hear.
And that's where you've probably learned to switch off.
Okay.
In your way, you've learned to control that. And this is very often, I have found, that ADHD or ADD people become OCD. Because you don't have the internal structure and routine as an ADD person. So you've got to create it externally.
Yes.
And that's where the OCD comes.
Yes,
because
that makes
if I make
sense.
my world perfect,
Yes.
I can function better.
Thank you.
But I can't function in chaos because I'm chaos inside.
I've got goosebumps. You've literally hit the nail on the head. So I always talk about this order of process, and even here you'll see everything is always in its place and it has to be in its place. But in the morning, if my key's missing and it's not where it's supposed to be, the series of events that then kicks off, I'm lost.
And anxiety
because
will come
the
in
anxiety
then,
will
and
come
stress
in.
will
I can't
come
find
in.
the key. I don't know where this is. I need to leave because I can't be late. I have to be on time. And if I'm late, then that process starts with me again. That click, click, click.
Yes.
You know, my pool's a little bit green. You can see it there. I can't tell you how that's bothering me to the nth degree because it's been raining.
That's the external.
Now,
because you're thinking, but it's also internal, but you keep looking there and thinking to yourself, how green is my pool? How green is my pool?
It's been raining and I hate it. I hate it, but it makes so much sense. So your sentence was?
Okay, to go back to the genetic component.
Yes, please.
Okay, so you one person now.
Correct.
Your kids will probably be
I've
ADHD.
warned my fiance about this, and I've warned her. I said, I'm sure you don't want another me. And trust me, I've heard the stories about what I was like when I was young. My mother says there was couches, and I would jump from couch to couch to couch to couch to couch for hours. Then I'd turn around and say, I'm going to rest my eyes. And literally, it was that. I would close my eyes. 10 seconds later, I'd stand up and I'd jump and jump and jump and jump and jump and jump. I mean, my fiance lives with me now. at the age of 37, I'm fairly functional, but even my insomnia is still there, and I've always had it. I've always had that insomnia. I just don't sleep. My head, I have
That's
to
the
go
internal.
through. I have to go
Because
through
there your
processes.
head is
doesn't switch off.
Doesn't switch off. And with the what they found in the research too is they are starting to treat more and more adults now, because it is more debilitating than one realizes, because it's called the hidden handicap. Nobody recognizes it as a problem. It's a naughty child,
Yes.
a lazy child, an
Okay.
unmotivated child.
And Mandy, sorry, the science is very clear that there is ADD, and the reason I ask is because in a lot of instances it's exactly that. It doesn't exist. It's just a figment of your imagination. It's a cop-out. It's an easy. I mean, I'd like to believe that I'm not crazy and that there is actually an issue, and that's why I can't function the way other people function.
But it doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Because
Not
if
at all.
you're
But
in
it's
the
definitely
right,
there.
if you're in the right career, it's actually wonderful,
Yes.
because you can think out the box, which you do.
Yes.
If you're not ADHD, you don't think about the box, because it's like going through life with blinkers.
Yeah.
You only see what's there, and you're only taking in what's there.
Yes.
So usually in sales,
Yeah.
good degree. Law is
Okay.
excellent for ADHD.
All right.
And anything entrepreneur, where
Yeah.
you're thinking of your own things, creating your own things. You're not just accepting
The status quo.
the status quo. And this is where it's so important that we need people who think out the box. Long ago, because my brother too, when I was telling you about the genetics, extremely ADHD, and my mom's maid said to her, but in our culture, he would have been a leader, because as the leader, you're aware if you're hunting of something going on there, something going on there. You're aware of that, you're aware of that. You're thinking ahead, you
Yeah.
thinking out the box, would have been the leader. But now, because our society has become very boxed, I always think of that song Little Boxes. That was
Okay.
the big hit when I was at varsity. We all go to university, you know the song.
No.
And then after university, we get married, we get a job, and we live in little houses, in little boxes with a little fence
Okay.
around. And because then you're expected to go back. I think probably university is the one place where one's allowed to start finding yourself. But after that, you go back into and live in the little box. But we need people who live out of the box
Yeah.
to create for us.
Well, I mean, I always say one of my favorite books I've ever read was Steve Jobs' autobiography. Of course, Steve Jobs is Apple. And Steve Jobs was a genius, but a complete narcissistic fucking lunatic. No jokes, right? And a lot of what I look at in terms of being a manager is to look at and go, this is what I don't want to be, okay? Because you can do that as well. But the world needs narcissistic CEOs. The world needs people who think out of the box. Just like the world needs people who can sit and
Politicians who are
focus. No, the world doesn't
narcissistic most
need.
of all.
Yeah, the world doesn't need politicians, right? But just like the world needs somebody who can sit and program for 8 hours.
Yes.
You know, there's the space for everybody. And when I do temperamental training, because I train on temperaments, I always say to the guys, there is no good or bad. Your temperament is your temperament, and it's just about understanding your temperament and being able to place the right temperament in the right position.
That's absolutely.
And it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
We need these different types of people.
And that's where you go back to your macrocosm and your tribe, because all of that makes up the unit
Yeah.
to work. So we're all part of a bigger matrix, if you put it that way. You need the programmer, you need the this, you need the that to function as a community.
Yes. Yes.
Because we can't all do it
There's
as
the
one person.
There's the most incredible TED talk I saw many years ago, and it's the world, what it takes to create a toaster. And basically, I think if I'm not mistaken, the caption was, it takes a whole society to create a toaster. So this guy went out to build a toaster, but to use traditional types of things to create everything within a toaster. So I'd have to get the plastics, mine the ore, to get the copper, and to do everything just to get the components to then try and create a toaster. And basically the whole TED talk was, the world needs a society to create a toaster. It's such a simple thing. We buy them for $100, throw them away. They're inconsequential to us, but what it actually takes just to get that done. It's incredible. And I mean, the world needs Steve Jobs to create iPhone.
Yes.
And I love my iPhone. I just got a new one yesterday. Thank you.
Okay. Enjoy.
Because mine was dying. But it's crazy how dependent and connected we are
Yes.
on one another.
And this is where you go back to Jung. We're dependent on that collective consciousness.
And I think, getting to something we were just discussing before the podcast, I think a massive issue is people recognize physical ailments very quickly, you know, because it's so
You
in
can
your
see
face.
it's in your
correct?
face.
I'm hurt, I'm injured, I have a broken arm, or whatever the case may be. But the psychological issues aren't recognized, and then you were saying aren't treated correctly from an educational, from a government and a medical aid point of view. I mean, maybe you want to go into that.
Oh, okay. That's a big one.
Let's
so
go.
where to start? If we start at education, because education has become too much about doing stuff and not experiencing things in a natural developmental process. And I feel where our education is going wrong today is because we're not starting at a young level. So when a child develops naturally, you develop from gross motor. That is your walking, your big body movements.
Okay.
And if you haven't developed the gross motor, you can't develop your fine motor skills, which is needed for writing, etc.
Okay.
When I test the kids today, none of them have got a posture. They all slouch in the chairs. The paper's this side and they this side, and they don't have the correct pencil grip.
Okay.
Because we're going back to preschool, and that is what should be the most important. But because we don't have colleges anymore, teachers training colleges, they're not trained to actually work on the basic developmental things. So they're not working on gross motor skills. I've had children from the local schools where they're writing at a 4-year-old level. Now, you're not made to write at a 4-year-old level because you haven't got the fine coordination. So they've got to learn a skill where they haven't got the developmental readiness to learn that skill.
Okay, so you're saying they're supposed to be writing at 4, but they can't?
They're not supposed to be writing
Okay.
at 4. They're supposed to be developing their gross motor skills and developing their fine motor skills.
Okay.
And fine motor skills isn't just picking up a pencil and writing. It's tearing, it's working on things where you're using, posting, those things for your fine motor skills. But if you haven't done the gross motor, and you're very much into physical fitness,
Absolutely.
kids don't have core
Oh
muscles.
my gosh. Absolutely.
This is why you've got this slouching.
Yeah.
And to go back to what you said earlier about they're all diagnosed as ADHD, a lot of them, because they haven't got a core muscle, how are you going to sit? You're going to sit this way, you're going to move, you're sitting this way,
got
you're
you.
jumping around because your body is getting tired.
Okay.
You cannot sit
Yeah, just sit.
physically because you haven't got that motor strength.
Okay.
And then only that, so up to 4, 5, 6, they should be developing those skills. Climbing, skateboarding, falling out of trees.
Agreed.
Because you're working with both sides of your body, crossing your midline. Crossing the midline is being able to work across your body.
Okay.
I see you also tilt the paper.
Oh, no, that's only because of the
this
angle.
Okay,
Yeah.
when you tilt the paper usually, so you're only writing using half your body.
But I do, actually, now that you mention it, I do that. I can't write like that.
Yeah,
I do tilt
because
it.
you're not working right across your body. Then they're trying to hold the pencil incorrectly.
Yes.
So you're working in this small space and you're using your wrist, whereas writing should come from here.
From your shoulder.
Yeah, it's your shoulder girdle where you've got to take that because you're working like that.
Okay.
So if you're working like this, you're putting the pressure here.
And
Your
I know
wrist
people that
gets
write
sore.
with this bent
Most
wrist.
of them do now.
Yeah, with this bent
Because
wrist.
they haven't had the developmental skills. So we're sitting with children going into school, grade 1, that haven't got the developmental skills to start with that formal work. Because at the preschools, they're teaching them to sit in a class and write instead of being outside and playing. And of course, that is also exacerbated because what do the two children do? They slouch in front of the TV all day. They
Play
eat
games.
in front of the TV.
Yes,
So
agreed.
kids don't have table manners.
Yes.
And that, to use both sides of your body, which is part of the developmental process, you can't eat if you're not using both sides. So it's much easier to just use a spoon,
okay.
and scoop the food into your mouth, and you don't have table manners.
Okay.
Because those are skills that are learned through using both sides of the body. It's learned through eating with a knife and fork from an early age.
Okay.
So we've missed that whole development.
A whole foundation.
The whole foundation. And everything is now trying to be built on no foundation.
Yeah.
And so that is the one big issue.
Okay.
Because children just aren't out there playing, riding bikes.
Yes. And another thing I believe is, part and parcel. So you're talking about the actual training with the left hand and the right hand and getting.
But that should happen naturally.
Yes, but macromotor skills and fine motor skills.
Yes.
But I also believe you should be out there testing yourself.
That's what I said, climbing trees.
Testing your
falling
own limits.
out of trees.
That's it. And
challenging. I can climb higher than you can.
Exactly. Because what we need is, and I think what's missed is, people don't understand that you can create a growth mindset, and you create a growth mindset by doing something you suck at. And if you're just sitting here in your room playing games, I'm sure you're going to get good at games, right? But you're not physically challenging yourself.
Not.
And you need to learn that growth, EQ, IQ, I believe, can be developed through a growth mindset. And growth mindset is challenging yourself, putting yourself in the chaos,
at
learning
all
how
levels.
far you can. Exactly, at all
Yes.
levels. I often in my consulting turn around to the guys and I say, do something you suck at. Go
Because where
fight.
do you learn?
How else do you challenge
You
yourself? And
don't
how do you
learn
grow?
if you haven't made mistakes.
No, you've got disorder and you've got chaos, and you need to
Yes.
intentionally, consciously put yourself in the chaos.
Yes, you have to.
Because if you stay in
have
the
to.
order, first of all, there's no learning
You're
and
stuck.
it's boring. Yeah. Okay, continue. Sorry, I digressed.
Okay. So then, and of course the other big issue, and that is a problem we've got in our country, is the language issue.
Okay.
Because on the one hand, you've got to have the physical developmental side to be ready for school. Schools are even doing, these poor preschool kids are getting homework, where they're sitting for an hour, 2 hours doing homework.
At what age? At like
4?
What are you doing homework for it for?
Yes. But what they're giving them is to do little patterns, which is just fine motor, but they haven't got the skills to lead up to the fine motor things. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Okay.
All right.
So they go to school. Now they can do, maybe write their name or other things they can write, but they're not doing it the right way because they haven't learned the correct way of letter formation. And that sticks with them for the rest of their life. Schools don't teach cursive. Well, a lot of them anymore. They just do print because
Okay.
now it's easier. And there was just an
didn't know that.
article I read the other day on the problem with not doing cursive, because cursive is integrating different areas of the brain, because it's a different movement and a different formation that's required. So it's supposed to be a more automatic.
Yes.
So it's a different area of the brain.
The brain that's
You're
actually
not
used.
processing the whole brain because you're going into print now. So that is an issue. But to go back to the language, if you don't have the language, which is another one of your developmental skills. So if you're starting and you haven't got a good language, you're going to battle with reading,
Yes.
you're going to battle with spelling, because
Of
you
course.
haven't got the basic skills to build those on.
Yes. Now, when you say language, where are you saying that this should be developed from?
Well, this is where we've got the problem here, is because that should be from home.
Okay.
Because your language
So you're
should
saying
be
that this should be
stimulated.
formative from the parents.
Yes. And
How would one
But-
go about doing that as a parent?
talking to your child, reading to
Reading
your
to
child.
your child, yes.
And that is the most important thing, is to read to your child.
Okay.
Because when you're reading, you're bringing in different vocabulary,
You
you're
are
bringing
indeed.
in language structures,
Yeah.
you're bringing in
Stories.
fantasy, you're
There we
bringing in
go.
problem solving.
Okay.
And that is one of the first things I tell the parents.
Read to your
Yes, I
kids.
don't want, because it's different, so you don't want to change. They've got to have their own culture and language. But if your own language is up to par, it's very easy then to learn a second language.
Yes. Okay.
But if your own language isn't good, you've got nothing to ground to learn a
that
different
makes
language.
perfect sense.
And the new research has also shown, because when we studied, it was you teach one language first.
Yes.
So because we become so multicultural, it's English and Afrikaans and Portuguese and English and Italian and Afrikaans, and we would say stabilize one language
And then
first
go on
and
to
then
another.
the other.
Okay.
But the new research has shown that if you've got parents with different language, so you speak English to the English-speaking parent, but it must be good English. It mustn't be mixed.
Yeah, okay.
And then you'll speak your Italian to the Italian
other
parent.
parent.
And then you're actually developing different areas of the brain,
Yes,
because there's more to a language than just the language.
of course.
It's the culture.
Of course.
That just goes
my
into
dad's Afrikaans, so his side of the family is Afrikaans. My mom's English, and I learned both at the same time. But both my parents spoke English to me, but all my uncles on my dad's side and cousins all spoke Afrikaans. And I
So
mean,
you were getting the integrated
of
from the
both.
beginning.
Yes.
So, but if you can't speak English, how are you going to?
Yeah, that makes sense.
You can't.
That makes sense. And it's such an easy thing to read. People, but I can't have books. Well, you have a phone and you have Google.
There's
and you
no, and there's still libraries.
And there's still libraries, but I mean, people
Yes.
can't get to libraries, but everybody has a phone. You
Yes.
can download a book and sit and
And
read
so
to your kids.
even if you can't, if you're not comfortable with speaking the language, you can still read. And then I say to them, speak to them, ask them about the book, tell me the story of it.
Okay.
And this the children love. If you had to change it, what would you do? Because now you're doing a little bit of thinking out the
Okay,
box
lateral-
and
yes.
lateral thinking.
Lateral thinking.
Now the same thing then, so they haven't got a basic, the language that is taught in the schools.
Okay.
And so now these children often come from different, so they might have one parent speaking Zulu, another speaking Xhosa. Now they've got to learn English at school. And added to that, they're now doing Afrikaans from preschool level. So they're overwhelmed.
Of course.
So if you've got a vocabulary of 1,000 words, okay, in English, if you're speaking 4 languages, you might still have a vocabulary of 1,000 words, but it's 25
exactly 25% between each.
between each.
Yeah.
And this is then when they start having difficulty. Unless you're a language person, but then you would have already picked it up.
Yeah, and not everybody is a language person.
No.
No.
And this is where there have been studies now too, you must have seen those, that the one was testing 17 countries, and South Africa was the bottom of the list for grade 4s reading with comprehension.
Really, eh?
They can't.
I remember I was on a speed reading machine when I was young. I was actually on a speed reading machine because I can speed read. Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Do you go down?
No, I use my finger.
Okay,
I
but
go
you're supposed to go
crossways.
down like that.
Yeah.
Because then you just reading.
Reading it, yeah.
Okay.
And the most amazing thing happened to me though. An ex-girlfriend of mine at the age of 16 gave me a book for my birthday. And first of all, I was like, what the fuck are you giving me a book for? Like, I mean, this is ridiculous. And thank you, Athelia. And I put this book on the side, and one night I couldn't sleep, and I decided to pick it up. It was a fiction fantasy book. I still know which book it is to this day. And I started reading it, and that was my love affair with books. And I started with fiction fantasy, and then it was every single fiction fantasy book, 15 series. But what happened, and what I realized what happened is, the moment I started reading, my vocabulary increased.
Absolutely.
And the moment I started using that vocabulary, people naturally assumed I was more intelligent.
Oh, but you're
and started
intelligent.
taking.
There's no
but
doubt about
No, but
that.
I wasn't. I don't
But
believe
they
I was
start-
intelligent.
Of
I really
course you
don't
are.
think. I think no, I don't. I think that it's something that I worked very hard for. I don't think I'm intelligent. I think I'm well read. I'm well versed, and I'm well knowledged. I think
take
I'm
a bet on that.
I think I'm
I'll
autodidactic.
challenge you. I'll challenge you to an
accepted.
IQ test, okay?
Challenge- I bet you my IQ test isn't high. I think I was autodidactic.
If you've got language, because in IQ you're testing both sides. And the first is verbal comprehension and problem solving.
Okay.
You've got the language, you can score high there.
Okay, fair enough. But maybe I've developed it because I also think IQ can increase. Can IQ? Definitely.
Yes, of course it can. It's not set in stone at all.
If you get pegged with an IQ of X when you're 16, that doesn't mean that you can increase it. I mean, it definitely means you can increase it.
Of course you can.
Okay.
But it's less likely to be able to increase the IQ at the age of 16 than if we've got the children at the age of 5. And this is why we've got to get these children in early.
Yes.
Because then
you've got the foundation to work on.
You've got the foundation.
Yes.
And you can build up those developmental skills, which is what an IQ is.
Yeah.
You're testing the
Makes perfect sense.
language skills, and the things you test are, and I'll just tell you in the verbal side, is the first is what we call similarities. So you give 2 words, very easy example, blue and red. How are they the same? What are they both? They're colours.
Yeah, I would have got that.
Oh, good for you. And then you're going on to things like, what is it? Permission and limitation.
Okay, what's that?
So it's control, methods of control. But you see how abstract you're getting now.
Okay.
Democracy and dictatorship.
Okay, I got you.
How are they the same?
How are they the same?
They ways of ruling.
Yes.
So you're going on to that level. So you must be able to understand where it comes from and to organize. Because the brain always works with associations.
Yes, 100%.
And so you've got to make the association. What's the commonality? Where am I going to put it? And that's how you get the similarities. Then you look at vocabulary. And this is, I'll give you a word, you can read it and define it.
Okay.
And you know how difficult it is to
actually
define.
Do it. Agreed.
The one word I know is leave. So I get it's on the tree, or we live a good life.
Yes.
But because they can see it, because of course you're getting your leaf and leave and live, that they're confusing. So you say leave. I leave the room. Okay, but what does that mean?
Yeah,
I could be walking into the room. I could be tidying the room.
Yeah.
I could be whatever. What does it mean if you leave? I can't.
Yeah, because you'd have to use another descriptive, which is like exit.
That's it. So you've got to be that much more specific.
Yes.
So now okay, I seem to be talking at a tangent.
No,
you look at children writing exams.
Okay.
So they answer, I leave the room. You're not answering the question.
You're not answering the question.
But they think they're answering the question because you've got this idea in your head.
Carry on.
So you know what you're saying, but your listener doesn't know what you're saying.
Yeah. Carry on.
And because then we're not referring, we're talking from our frame of reference.
I've got you.
Okay, to diverge again. The words, and this is another thing we don't realize when you're looking at vocabulary, have got an emotional meaning. And this is where, when you're doing couple counseling and you think you're communicating well, because we communicate from our frame of reference.
Of course.
So I give the example always of dog. Mm-hmm. Okay, if I say dog to you, you think of your naughty Great Dane and your other little dog, but you've got a nice feeling.
Yes.
When I say dog.
There is a very comfortable and loving association.
If I say dog and I've been bitten by a dog.
Different.
It's a different. So you talking, you understand what you're saying or what you're thinking, but you're not thinking how the other person is interpreting what you say. And this is where communication goes far deeper. And that's where it becomes a problem in relationships.
That can even be linked to something like empathy, right?
Totally.
Because I was I had a very, my upbringing was exceptionally difficult. And one of my biggest problems was I had very little empathy for anybody because my frame of reference was so big. You know, for me, your issue is not an issue.
It's not.
This is an issue. This is what I went through when I was young, and
Yes.
that's relevant. And what I had to slowly teach myself was, it
Everybody's
is an
got
issue
their-
to
for
them.
them.
For them.
If it's an issue for
within
you,
their
it's
frame
an
of
issue.
reference, and it was a massive issue for me to try and bridge that gap. So, let alone my frame of reference. Now you're talking language, which makes it even more complicated.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So then you're looking at vocabulary, and then we look at comprehension. So you're asking questions, which again, if you've read, your general knowledge is greater.
Yeah.
And of course, the one question, and none of them get right today, and I can understand it because they're not in the frame of reference anymore, is what is a stamp?
Oh,
A stamp is something the teacher gives you for good work.
no.
No? What? Oh, or why? No, it's not quite that. It's why do we put a stamp on a letter?
Oh, okay.
Because they don't write letters anymore,
No,
so you don't
there's
use
no frame
stamps
of reference.
anymore. So
What you
there's
should be
nothing.
what you should be asking is, why do I put an email address in an email?
Because that they would understand. But
understand.
it's not that either. It's not the address. Stamp is the address. That's what they tell me. It's to show where it's come from.
Yes.
No, it isn't. Why do you put a stamp on a letter?
You put a stamp on a letter.
It's not giving you the address.
No, it's
The
not.
stamp
It's to certify.
might tell you. That's right. To say or certify, it's actually a receipt.
Okay.
To say
yes.
that you've paid
Oh,
for
sure, I
that
got that right.
for that service. But they don't know what stamps are.
Yes. So, what is their frame of reference?
There isn't one.
But I mean, surely that should just be updated?
Also, yes and no, because if you're looking at history and where things come from,
But
you should know.
Mandy, who,
Legal documents have all got stamps.
of course, who
So-
reads history today? I think one of the biggest travesties is, first of all, that people don't read in its own. And I think it's an absolute travesty. But then people don't read history because they see history, and again, I kind of blame the schools, because just because I'm not fascinated in, for argument's sake, the Boer War, right? Just for argument's sake, doesn't mean that I'm not fascinated in World War II or World War One or whatever the case may be. I mean, we're talking about wars now, right? But any event in history. And I'm not interested, well, I am. I'm very, very interested in our history as a country, because I'm trying very much to understand the facts so that I can be truthful.
From both sides, yes.
So I can be truthful. Truth speaking to me is key. Not you took this and you came here, because I don't know what the truth is. I don't think it's taught, and I mean that's an issue. But let's take, for argument's sake, something like communism. And I mean, I know this is a little bit of an area, but if I look at what communism stands for, and if I'm purely intellectual, I can see why it is that people would turn around and go, that's a really good idea. From an intellectual point of view, from a tenured professor point of view, where I can look at this and go, wow, I see what they wanted to do. If I go back in history and I actually see what the ramifications of those actions were, I can understand that it will never work, because this utopia that we're looking for in communism, it practically breaks apart. Okay, and there's certain reasons for that. But if I'm not willing to look at history, right, I can't understand those actions. So we've got a bunch of people running around today intellectually trying to say that this is the way you should live your life, but they aren't looking at the 10,000 years before that, where we've actually got prime examples. They're looking at now going, no, this is where we must live our lives, because nobody looks at history anymore. How frightening.
And we repeat the same mistakes.
The same mistakes over and over again. And I mean, a lot of the psychologists I listen to just turn around and go, guys, there's examples. Especially if you look at evolutionary psychology and then if you start looking at historical psychology, there's examples. Just go back and look. It's happened before. But they don't.
But even as a person, I'm not talking about looking at repeating history as a nation.
Yes.
But as a person,
Same
your
mistakes.
mother tells you don't do that. You will do it until you've learned the lesson yourself.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know, one of the big, call it a fault too, in human nature. We don't learn from other people.
No.
We've got to go there and go and make our own mistakes.
Yeah.
And learn from that.
It is. It is.
So,
But we
yes.
can, if we're willing to open our minds a little bit. There's so much we can learn through reading autobiographies,
Yes,
from
it
learning
is.
histories, from reading what actually. I'm so fascinated with how we got here as a species. You know, just to where we are now, which is a bloody miracle. We made it. You know, the evolutionary point of view, internal, and the societal challenges we had to overcome just to be here as a species. I mean, it's flipping incredible. So I don't get why other people aren't also fascinated, and why people don't want to know where we came from so we can learn.
Maybe that's your ADHD.
Maybe. And maybe that's my gift.
That's
I'm
what
curious.
I was telling you.
I'm very
You're curious and you
I'm
want to know
exceptionally
more, and
curious.
you don't just accept things at face value.
No. And I
But
am
that's
willing to
also
change.
that's also intelligence.
Maybe.
Because otherwise, if I've been told that, okay, I'll learn that and I'm fine with that. Intelligence is that inquiring mind.
You know, my
as
biggest
well.
lesson is you and I both had a think tank that we were part of, for a lack of a better way of putting it. And I sat down at a lecture one day, which was a lecture of Hinduism. And the speaker had a picture, a pictogram of Shiva, obviously standing
Yes.
over a dead corpse with an erection. And next to that, the beginning of the universe from the Big Bang.
Yes.
And I stood there and I looked at this, and it was Shiva, of course, is always depicted very, very warlike, with blood and guts and gore and all the rest of it. And I didn't understand what a pictogram is. And for the people listening, a pictogram is a story in a picture, because they had no written language. And I immediately wanted to stand up and walk out. And a mutual friend of ours, Roddy Pettenberger, grabbed me by the arm and said, sit down and just listen. Because everything, all my preconceived ideas was, this is disgusting, this is terrible, why would I want to listen to this, why would I want to look at it? And I sat down, and that hour changed my life, because I was willing to go, okay, outside of my comfort zone, let's hear the story. It wasn't the story, it was the lesson I learned, which is, you're not always right. Your
Yes.
ideas aren't always correct. You know, and I'm very willing to look at multiple sets of ideas. But then in that, I've still got to stick with the only thing that I can actually stick to, which is my values. So if it's not part of my value system, I can change my idea, and I can change my thoughts, because we get given false information, and even the information we're given from science updates, you know,
And science has changed.
and science has changed and
That was
updated.
like a shock to me, because when I was at school, I learned these things as facts.
Yes.
And I was very good child that always did the right thing and would never question authority or anything. So that is what my teacher said, and that must be.
Must be right, yes.
And now suddenly there were all these other things. And I had to get over that. How can facts change?
Yeah.
Because they're not actually facts.
No. No.
So
no.
that was
No.
quite a
I mean,
mindset for
there
me
are certain fundamental
as
truths.
as an adult.
Yeah, and
Yes.
as an educator.
Yes.
You know, I can guarantee you, and I mean, I would never sit and have this argument with you because I respect you too much, but there are certain educators that I don't respect, and I would sit there and argue with them with things that they believe to be true that I can prove to them are not true. 100%. I mean, I listened to the most incredible podcast the other day talking specifically about what we discussed earlier, which is the fact that do mental health drugs help? Yes, they do. But they dished out too easy. So this is the story that
No, they're not Smarties.
Yeah. This is the story that this guy said. They went and worked in India, and it was actually a South African psychologist who went and worked in India. And at that point, the first thing came out in terms of drugs, and this drug came out and said, this is given to somebody who has depression. And this little Indian community where he was working, they didn't understand what the word depression was. So they said to them, well, it's, when you're sad and you started giving all these adjectives and descriptors in terms of what depression is. He goes, oh, we've got a cure for that. And the guy goes, well, what do you mean you've got a cure for this? He says, well, I'm going to give you an example. We had, I think it was India, but nevertheless, it was a little community and in another country. He says, well, we had a farmer who stepped on a landmine and he blew his leg off, okay? And he was depressed. And they go, yes, because that's understandable. You lose your leg, you can go into a state of depression, okay? He says, so then how did you heal that? And he goes, well, we bought him a cow. And they were like, what do you mean? Well, we bought him a cow because now he can be a farmer. So we went and we spoke to him. We understood why it was that he's depressed. We listened to his story, and then we bought him a cow, and now he's no longer depressed because now he can do something else.
Solution-based.
Solution-based. purpose is the word.
Okay.
I believe that, to me, that's the word. Because if I've got purpose, then I can overcome.
Yes.
And I think we've lost purpose. I think most people don't even try and find purpose.
And it looks at what is your purpose? Is your purpose to live in a nice house, have a nice car? Because when I've got that, where to from here?
Where to from there?
Or is your purpose self-actualization?
And is it a combination of those two? Yeah.
Well, you've got to have all of that to get to
purpose.
self-actualization.
Yes,
and to go back to
self-actualization,
Maslow,
gotcha.
obviously, if you haven't got a roof over your head and food,
That's what you need to focus on.
that's what you need to.
Yes.
And then to go back to education, because that is another problem. So many of these children, I've also thought, going to school and learning is the least of their problems.
I agree.
Because they don't have homes, they
I
don't
agree.
have food, they don't have clothes. Now they've got to go and sit and get shouted at because they haven't done homework. And
I had no lights. I had no... Yeah.
yes, so one has got to go back first to basics. Sort out the basics, and then you can go to...
And then you can build from
But
there.
then education is also basic, because if you've got education, you
I know.
can
And
move.
it's such a slippery slope, because it's so easy for us to sit here. Look, I had a good upbringing, albeit exceptionally hard, but I had a basis to grow from. And I used that basis. So good on me, for argument's sake, and I said that in inverted commas. But you talk about someone who really doesn't have anything. They've got
Street
six
children.
or
Your
seven
street children.
6 or 7 brothers and sisters. The parents don't have money. Where do they go to? What are their goals? But
To have food.
yeah, literally
Maybe
to
find
survive.
a meal.
Yeah, literally to survive, let alone worry about education. It's frightening.
It is frightening.
What is the solution?
Well, back to, yes, I think a lot of the solutions, we would be going into a political ground, but I think what they're trying to do to work on the poverty is important. But then again, people can stay in that poverty-stricken area if they don't have if your purpose is just to survive. But if you've got a greater purpose, there is a way.
There is always a way.
There is a way to
Yeah.
move. Like that one gave him a cow. There is something. And unless you become victim. If you sit in victim mode,
Yes,
you're not going to move.
agreed.
You need to have a reason for doing something else. And not... And this is across all cultures. I mean, I've got people that come for therapy, and when I see their name there, I think, oh, here we go again. It's the same thing over and over. Poor me. Okay, what can you do? Let's look at this. Try this, try this, try
Yes.
this. Get the next week. Did you
Victim-
try that?
No.
No.
Victim
Because in a
mentality.
way, they're enjoying being a victim.
Oh yes, because you can get so wrapped up in that identity. Oh, absolutely.
And it's poor me. And,
Yeah.
And I
And
think...
they can get addicted to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, very
because-
much so.
But then... Okay. You know the victim triangle.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Tell me about it.
So we've got a victim triangle. So you have victim,
Yes.
rescuer,
Yes.
and persecutor.
Okay.
Now we all kind of take on one of those roles. As a psychologist, you've got to be careful of rescuing too much, because that one's almost your natural.
Yes,
If you're
your
going to
nature to
go
do-
into
yes.
that kind of field with empathy and those things, you are a rescuer.
Okay.
And if one's rescuing, you're always trying to rescue everybody.
And you can become a people pleaser.
Yes.
Yes.
You can become a people pleaser. And you're not necessarily doing them any good. But so you'll always find, not always, most of the time, a victim and a rescuer will be together. Because the rescuer needs
the
a victim.
Yes.
And the victim needs the rescuer. And that
Okay.
again is what happens in very many marriages. Until maybe the victim starts becoming stronger, goes for therapy or something,
Yeah.
and then they don't need the rescuer. So now our roles have changed. Unless we can adapt to that.
Oh shit, yeah, because the whole relationship dynamic has changed, yes.
So you'll also get then the rescuer who now gets fed up sometimes. Now I need help. A victim can't help a rescuer.
No.
And
they don't have
now you can't understand why your friend group aren't supporting you. Because your friend group are usually victims if you're a rescuer.
Okay.
So then you become the persecutor. So now I'm fed up.
All right.
So now go back to a relationship. I'm tired of always doing this. I'm fed up with you, and you start persecuting. So you start fighting.
Okay.
Then,
So, and become a little bit confrontational.
yes.
Okay.
But then because you're a rescuer, then you feel bad again. So then you march and you revolt back. Same with the victim.
Are you saying, sorry, Mandy, are you saying that by and large, most of society, most of people play one of those three? Oh, wow.
You'll play them all the time.
Yes.
Take a simple thing like a diet.
Yes.
Okay, now I feel so sorry for myself because I'm on a diet.
Yes.
So I'm going to rescue myself. I'm going to buy that chocolate. Now I'm cross with myself, so I persecute myself. So now I go on an even stricter diet.
Okay.
And that is how we move around.
Holy shit. So our goal then is to try and balance that out?
Yes, you must be aware of what my role is. So if you can show someone, look, you're in victim,
Yes.
you need to now rescue yourself. You can't look for an outsider to rescue you. How can you rescue yourself?
Yeah.
Because, and you look at an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, there's the victim, but you've got your persecutor. And because you've been persecuted so much as the victim, you've lost all sense of self.
Yes. You've got
And
weakness
there
of
the
character.
therapy is, you've got to help them to rescue themselves.
Yes. Massively so.
So that's where it goes in all of those directions. And also going back to the victim, I think one of my greatest learning experiences for myself was when I was shot that time.
Tell me that story. Yeah, you were.
Okay.
It was at your house, eh?
It was at my house.
Yeah.
And I'd been to a meeting, because already then they were starting to try and get rid of the psychologists in the schools. In your specialized education, your remedial schools, they were trying to move the psychologists out. So we had this big meeting. And I'd fetched the other psychologists in Springs, and it was a school combi because it was a school event, picked them all up. And when I came home, it was on just off Tonk Meter, when I was on the Tonk Meter, I'd sort of picked up a car behind me, and there was one parked there. And I thought, this looks a little bit odd, because this one was overtaking and the other one hovering. Something's going on here. When I get to the robot, I'm not going to, the one was ahead of me then, or both of them were, I'm not going to put on my indicator. If he turns, I'll go straight.
Okay.
So if he goes straight, I'll turn.
Yes.
And I did, and they were gone, and I thought, phew, okay, and I relaxed. And I pulled into my driveway, and as I turned, there was the guy with the gun, and two behind him. And he wanted the keys and my bag, but I wasn't going to give my bag. I gave him the keys to the combi.
Why don't you just give him your bag, Mandy?
No, because I didn't have money at that time, and I'd just drawn money, and I'd go and pay all my debts, and I was broke.
Okay.
And I couldn't part with my bag.
I got you.
That was my life.
Yeah?
My life. Anyway, he stopped about the bag and gave him the keys, and then he put the gun to my forehead. You can still see here. And he looked me straight in the eye, and he pulled the trigger. And I was kind of dumbfounded, because to me, I didn't think it was a real gun in the first place. It looked like a toy to me.
Okay.
So it was point blank. The gun actually touched, but he jerked. So it ran across the top of my head.
So
and
he actually
burned.
shot you?
Yeah, you can just see the indentation.
You're
Yeah,
joking.
and it went that way.
I'd heard the story, but I mean, I've never heard it from you. Okay.
And I had and I wouldn't have believed it, but I had an outer body experience
Okay.
there. I can remember putting my hand up to my head and seeing the blood and thinking to myself, well, I've been shot in the head, so I must be dead. And I was looking
It's a
on.
perfectly logical thing to think.
I was looking on at myself, walking around and trying to open, and that was my moment of fear. I couldn't get my door open. I was shaking then.
I can
And
imagine.
he was battling to start the combi. And then I got the door open and he managed to reverse out. But I came in because my neighbour, Emra, you'll remember Emra Stain, Justin Stain's mom.
Okay.
She was having an interview at the school the next day. And I picked up the phone and I said to her, Emra, your appointment is that time. Finished, done. John Paul still phoned the police because they were staying there then.
Okay.
And then I phoned my dad.
Is this while you shot?
Yeah, I'd just been shot.
Okay, and you
So I
phoned
phoned
your
my
dad?
dad and I said, I've been hijacked and shot in the head. No, there was no reply. So I phoned again and thought, well, I better leave a message. My poor dad must have freaked. I said, Dad, I've been hijacked and shot in the head, but I'm fine. And then I heard this car screaming at me. He must have got the shock of his life. And that was that. But before that, it was just after I'd got divorced and I was feeling very sorry for myself. And
Sure.
I was totally in victim mode and poor me and what else can go wrong. And that changed me because after that I thought I should actually have been dead.
Yeah.
There's no ways I should have been alive
And I mean, it's
today.
only the jerking that saved your life.
Yes.
Basically, he was a shit shot.
Absolutely. I think he'd never have someone looking him straight in the eye when he's pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
And so there's obviously a lot more I've got to do in life.
Yeah,
So
you've
get
been
your
given
act
your
together
chance. Got
and
you.
do it.
I've got you.
And that's changed
But I mean,
so much
I've
for
heard
me.
this so many times from NDE, near-death experience people, where it's completely changed their lives. It's given them the appreciation for what it is that they actually have.
Yes.
Because I don't think we are appreciative of what we got, myself
No.
included. You take it for granted.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, you take
And
life for granted.
When you go back to looking at empathy, as you said you didn't have, because apart from reading and comprehension, maths is a very big problem.
Okay.
And I can remember at school, and you would have had the same experience, because I was bright, and those days, there was still a lot of males do this and females do that.
Okay.
And I loved science and maths. Those were my subjects. And I think we were 5 girls in the class. And the science teacher would explain something, and I'd get it before he'd finished explaining. And the others would sit there, and then he'd say to the poor boys, a girl understands.
Oh, yeah.
So come on, guys, get your act together. Mandy, please go and explain to them.
Oh, really?
And I couldn't understand how they didn't get it. Even with maths. I loved maths. I'd work ahead.
Really?
And we had an old teacher who couldn't really explain it. So in the maths class, I'd be walking, teaching everybody maths. But I also couldn't understand why, because I just got it.
See,
And-
maths, nothing.
No, but maths is a different
I
side.
battle with maths.
But I'll tell you the other reason you battle with maths, probably because of your ADHD, and you missed out a lot of the steps along the way.
Probably.
Because you weren't focused.
Exactly what happened. I'm sure of
Yes.
it, because we had shit teachers, and I mean, no
That's-
offense to the
and
teachers.
I want to tell you why. Because you're not going to study maths if you don't get it.
No.
So if you get it, you become the teacher. But you can't understand how to teach ones
Yes.
that don't get it.
Yes, I've got you. I've
Okay.
got you. And there's a big, very big difference in teaching and being a good teacher.
So you should actually be bad at maths to be teaching maths.
I've got you. Yeah, because you're going to take for
You can
granted that
underst-
everybody understands it, and I didn't
And
get
why
it.
don't you?
Yeah, because you're stupid. That's what I heard.
Yes. So that is where a big problem has come in the maths side.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
And also, a lot of the bright people were like in primary school and just get it, the maths. You don't know how you got it, but you got it. And I test a lot. I get them.
Yeah, because you do career testing.
I do
correct?
career testing.
What is
I
the
do
correct terminology for that?
aptitude.
Oh, you do aptitude testing. There we go. And I mean, how
Okay.
amazing. You get to hopefully guide kids in. Okay.
Except that today, the careers that you haven't even been heard of, some of them are
Yeah.
going to be opening up.
Yeah.
Anyway, I get a lot of extremely bright, gifted students to test that are in grade 10, standard 8, grade 11, just not getting it.
Not getting maths.
Not getting it, hardly passing.
But they're
And-
intelligent.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's the same. Some of them, yes, ADD, concentration problems. And then in a way bored, I think, with what's happening, and
That's a big thing,
then
eh?
going into other things. But it's because they just got it. They've never learned the methods.
Yeah.
So now the maths is far too difficult to just get. Now you've got to be able to
okay.
plan to get there.
Got you.
But they don't know how to do that.
So I can equate it as follows, and this makes complete sense to me. I do a sport called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you've got two different types of people who rock up, right? The ones who can completely just get it, right? And then the guys who use physical attributes. And the guys who use their physical attributes don't focus on their technique. So they go far ahead of everybody else who don't have physical attributes, okay? And eventually they get to a level where the guy who doesn't have the physical attributes has had to work so hard on his technique that eventually his technique surpasses the guy with the physical attributes.
Yes.
And because the guy with the physical attributes hasn't had to work on his technique or anything. So physically, he's able to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
Yes.
but he doesn't get the technique.
That's exactly.
And then what happens is, as the kid with the technique passes him, he's like, oh no, screw this shit, and he leaves.
And that's what happens with schooling.
It makes perfect sense now.
And it's the same with everything else, because with the brightness, there's usually a good memory. It's
Okay.
probably what got you through. So you sit there and you kind of remember. You didn't study much, did you? At primary, high school?
No, I didn't. I got
No.
no, but I mean, I don't have a great memory either.
You probably got better than you think. So they would also remember enough from class
To get through.
to get through, or just quickly go through it the night before. Now that's also not enough.
At a higher level,
At a
especially at
higher
a varsity level.
especially.
Yeah.
Now I don't know how to study.
Yeah.
I don't know how to take out important information
Okay.
because I've never had to do it.
Yeah.
I just remember.
Yeah.
So now you've got to learn another method. Okay, that's one thing. And then just to go back to the language thing again I spoke about. What people don't realize is every subject has a different language.
Okay.
You've got your language for maths. Okay.
Yes.
You've got your language for science. You've got your language for history. You've got your language for biology. You've got your language for business things.
Yes. Languages,
So
jargons.
each one is a different language. So if you're not learning the definitions and what the words mean, you haven't learned.
What it
You can't
actually
do
is.
that other subject.
Yeah.
And this is where our children are battling too, because they're trying to just learn off by heart without understanding. And if you go through there, they haven't got a clue what the words mean, so they haven't learned and they can't understand.
Yeah. I got you.
So it's that language that comes through.
Right from reading. Hey, do your
Right from
parents read to you?
reading. And in the first years, when you're going to write your first exam, the parents have got to sit with you, explain what it means, tell me the story. Do you know this? Ask questions to see
And then
whether
if the
the
dad
child
is,
knows
if the
it.
parents are dysfunctional, that kid's already starting out 15 places at the back.
Totally. Yeah.
Jeez,
Because
that's
it's got to
frightening.
go to understanding first. So teachers should just be teaching the understanding of it all first and what it means.
Why do you think the
Before you
curriculum's
go.
wrong?
I don't know why the curriculum, because they keep changing it. Instead of going back to language, just teach language
And
first.
playing.
All
and
we need is language. For the everybody made fun. There was that thing on Facebook of we must go back to the 3 R's. We used to call it the 3 R's.
Which is?
Reading, writing, and arithmetic.
And arithmetic.
Yes, arithmetic. But that's how it was referred to. In my day,
Oh,
we
was it?
spoke about the 3
3
R's.
R's.
And arithmetic, because that's how you're saying it. And that is what we said. We
Oh,
learned the
really?
3 R's. So I had quite a giggle at everybody making fun of her. But I grew up with the
knowing
3
it that way.
R's.
Okay, I see.
Okay, so if you just in those first years teach
The 3 R's.
reading, writing,
It feels so bad for me to say that.
yeah.
The 2 R's and the A. Double R.
Well, writing isn't an R either. It's the
W.
WR.
Yeah.
But you say arithmetic.
Reading,
But what are
writing.
you hearing?
Yeah.
Arithmetic.
Yeah.
As I say, we used to refer to it as the 3 R's.
RWA.
So go back to that, even if it's still higher. Because if they can read, you've given them what they need. But to go back to that study, we were at the bottom, grade 4.
That's right, you said so.
The children I test cannot read. They can't read, physically read. And they don't know what they've read. They don't have the comprehension.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. So they don't have the ability to actually read the letters, but then they don't have the ability to comprehend what it is they're reading.
Well,
in
some of
terms
them can read the letters.
Yeah, but they can't comprehend or put
what
it
they're
in.
reading.
It's
They can't comprehend what they're reading.
and that's. I'm going to blame bad parenting.
We start with parenting.
Would I be right?
Yes. Yes, I agree with you there, but we've got to help bad parenting. Because if you, as a parent, okay, say you're going into any job, you've never done the job.
You get training.
You're going in there, you get training.
Exactly.
And parenting is probably, like we spoke about a license earlier, the most important job. But we don't know how to
agree.
parent.
Yeah.
We haven't been taught.
Yeah.
Then it's very autocratic, and then it's very let the kids laissez-faire, let them do whatever they like.
Yeah.
And how do we? So with parents working hard, you've got this big guilt trip.
Yeah.
So what do? You buy the children stuff
Yes.
and you spoil them. But we're not doing basic
Basic
parenting.
stuff. I mean, I look
because
at
we don't
if
know
I look at
how.
I've got my goddaughter's parents are incredible, but both of them are highly intelligent parents. They're both financially in a great position, and they work with their kids. They buy them the type of things that will allow them to develop their motor core skills, and they buy them the right types of toys, and they read to them. I mean, very often, he'll turn around to me and be like, "Look, I can't make training tonight. I'm with my daughters." You know, and I mean,
Yes.
that's
what
amazing.
it should
That's
be.
what it should be like.
It should be.
But they're in a position to do so, number one, financially. Number two, from a time point of view. And number three, they actually know to do it. I look at some people at the age of 21. I mean, I know of somebody at the age of 22 or 23, and she was having her 3rd kid, and I'm like, what are you doing? I'm 37. I'm financially stable, not stable, right? And I'm shit scared of having a kid because of the financial repercussions that it'll bring. And how are you doing this? And what do you know at that age to bring up 3 kids?
No, you don't. So as I say, and they'll copy maybe parenting skills from the parents if they've, and it depends what their parents.
What their parents were like, yeah.
So our education should be starting at parents. And even there at the schools, and I've spoken to the schools, these little grade ones, you're expecting the parents to teach them phonics. Okay.
What's phonics?
The sounds
Ah,
of the
okay.
words.
Perfect.
So
Okay,
a
so
lot
how
of parents would have learned
enunciation.
ABC, okay?
Yes.
But it's not ABC. They've got to learn abacada, the sound of the word. Your ABC is your graphic,
Is your graphic.
and what it looks like.
Okay.
The phoneme, the phonics, is what it sounds like.
Okay.
So now the child's learning A at school. The parents are saying A at home. So if you've got a word like cat and you're saying C-A-T, you're not going to get cat. If you
No.
say ka-a-ta, you're joining it and you get cat.
Okay.
Because the parents don't have the skills and they expect her to do a lot of the teaching at home. Whereas I've said to them, make, if I had the time, maybe you should do that. Make a CD of the sounds, what they sound like, so the parent can listen to what it is when they're working with the child at home.
I'm with you.
Because they're only trying to do their best.
Of course,
But
they're trying
again,
to
it
do
goes
their
back
best.
to educating the parents first so they can help their children.
Yeah.
They don't know,
No, of course they
so
don't
they're
know.
trying.
No. I mean, I read the most incredible book October last year by, she was a clinical psychologist, Angela Duckworth. And she wrote a book called Grit, and it's about creating grittier kids and grittier people. So basically the book's premise is they took West Point, which is a naval institute in America, and Harvard. And what is the difference between the people who stick it out and the people who drop out? And that was basically the premise. I mean, it's a lot bigger than that, but just to sum it up. And I read this book and I was blown away by how incredible it is. And I walked into my kids, when I did my kids grading, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grading, and I looked at all the parents, I was like, you go and buy that book. Because it can teach you so much just about growing gritty kids, But if you're not out there reading for yourself and trying to find information for yourself, you won't even know that that's out there.
It's your resilience.
And I think it's your biggest responsibility.
And we've got you've got the parents, you actually call helicopter parents, that do everything for the kids. So they're hovering around all the time. And then you've got the ones that do nothing.
They're absent.
Whereas we need the middle line.
Yeah.
Because your children have got to do stuff for themselves.
Agreed.
You can't do it all for them.
Now,
and this is where I'm sure your grit
millennials
comes in.
are as a result of helicopter pilots. Parents, is that right? Do you think so?
Explain what you...
What I mean by that is, if I don't learn how to do things for myself, if I don't bump my own head, if I don't try skateboarding, if I don't push my own limitations, if I don't realize that I have certain limitations, I'm going to grow up sheltered. I'm going to grow up in an environment where I think that I can do anything that I want to, which in reality I can't. And I'm also entitled, very much so. And I'm also going to be given this great support, which is you are the best. You can do anything you want to. And here's an 8th place medal.
Okay.
Right? And this 8th place medal thing drives me insane, because life, the big bad world out there, is going to give you none of that. And I mean, I see young millennial kids walk in and wanting to make a difference in a business of 280 people.
Just explain what you mean by millennium kids.
Millennial kids. So millennial will be 79 and down.
Yes.
No. I'm 80. Yes, so 81. 81 and down. I'm not a millennial. I don't think so.
And what defines millennial kids?
No, it's time period.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, time period. So it's the time period. So for argument's sake, you guys were baby boomers.
And then you've got the pre-one in between the transition millennium and the baby boomers.
Correct. So the millennial idea is just that we've got these kids who are extremely self-entitled, who grow up with instant gratification because of the types of technology we have right now, believing that because their parents told them that they can literally do anything, getting rewarded for coming 8th. I call it 8th place medals. Oh, you so great, Susie. You came stone fucking last.
But they must be rewarded.
And here's a medal, and you should be a swimmer. No, she can't be a swimmer because her parents are over freaking feeding her. She's fat, no offense, because this is what happens.
A lot of kids
are massively obese,
yes.
right? Massively obese because they don't play anymore. And now I'm rewarding this. So I'm reinforcing the fact that you can be anything you want to do. Then they come into the work environment. And within the work environment, they're like, I can be amazing. I want to change the world. And I want to change the world in 3 months. And if I can't change your entire company with my very limited knowledge in 3 months, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave. And that, I promise you, Mandy, that's what we stuck with today, hiring young kids. And I'm grossly generalizing. Of course, but by and large, one of these types of things that I've said, I actually see it. I had a guy come in for an interview the other day, and I interviewed him for a position. And I said to him, okay, why did you leave the position? No, I didn't like it. So I said, you live with your parents? He goes, yeah. So I said, it was easy to leave, eh? He goes, yeah. So I said, why didn't you stick it out until you found another job? No, I didn't feel like it. Now, I must hire that guy. I was brought up on old school principles, right? Don't burn your bridges.
Yes.
Look, first of all, I didn't have the opportunity of leaving. I had to work. Right, so it wasn't a question of I can go and leave and live with mommy. Right, I had to work because I needed money, because that's the way things work. But it's so easy to just give up. Oh, I can't make a difference. I can't change your whole business in 3 months. This is the mindset.
Yes.
So, do you think that millennial kids may be as a result of helicopter pilots?
Absolutely, from that.
Okay.
And I think also from what we spoke about earlier, yes, the entitlement, but also because of the compensation of parents not actually parenting, but
Pain.
just paying.
Yeah, paying by toys or by
toys,
Xbox or
put them onto the computer or the iPads or the tablets or whatever. So they're not learning basic skills again. And I've actually got, it was very interesting, a girl I saw the other day, and I've seen her for many years on and off, has just gone to varsity and is battling because she doesn't know how to make friends, she doesn't know how to fit in.
Okay.
Because we don't make friends on a physical level anymore.
No, it's all digital.
It's all digital,
Yeah.
or WhatsApp or Instagram, and you're not having conversations.
When do we do this, Mandy?
No, we
Just
don't.
what we're doing right
Yes.
now.
So, and my son was saying to me, so what is this Instagram that they do? I said, yeah, they take a photo of a funny thing and the other one will reply, oh, cool, or whatever. And so that's their communication and their level of socializing.
Yeah.
So now she doesn't know how to actually meet real people.
Yes.
So
And
she says, but
interact with.
nobody interacts with me. I said, they wouldn't. I said,
No.
because you sit there, you put this wall, you're so scared. I said, do you walk into a lift and smile at the people and say hello? No. So I said, well, try it. Oh, she came back and she said, yeah, I actually chatted to one or two people and got their names.
Mandy,
That basic.
I know that to me is
But give her WhatsApp and Facebook.
spam. Yeah,
got it all.
but that to me, and maybe it's because of my age, but that to me is just completely incomprehensible. Like, how do you not know how to speak to people? But it makes sense. It makes sense when you're living in this digital sphere.
They stand in the playground in a circle,
On their phones.
WhatsApping each other.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I suppose you say that, but we do that. You know,
Not
we'll
when you're
sit-
sitting next to each other.
Oh, not WhatsApp one another. Yes, I've got you. Okay, so
Okay.
they're actually WhatsApping one another.
Yes, they're WhatsApping one another there to communicate.
Yeah, I have another issue with and obviously many years ago when I was single and I was in the sort of dating realm, I would speak to various girls, and a lot of it started on the telephone, and I made it a point blank that I refused to speak to people who used like GR8, because when we first started SMSing,
I'm only
you would
smiling
pay.
because I hate it.
You would
But
pay
anyway.
for an SMS. I get it.
Okay.
So you'd pay for each letter, I think if that's how it worked. But I remember you could only go over fast. So what people did is they created this shorthand, which I get, right?
Because they can't spell.
Well, no, and I think it was initially because of this limitation,
Okay.
right? So let's blame the cell phone networks because we might as well, right? But then eventually that changed, but they stuck with this, and then eventually they couldn't spell, right? And I was just like, I refuse to date a girl, right, who uses great, or
I write full sentences,
right, that's
punctuation.
it. It's for free. It's for free. I sometimes if I'm communicating, let's say I communicate with you. In fact, I have communicated over WhatsApp. Do you see that I have spaces in, and it's almost like I'm writing an email, and that's how I communicate professionally. Fine, I won't do that with my brother or my friend or whatever the case. But if I'm communicating professionally with you, that's how I do it.
Yes. That, when you mention spelling, kids can't spell today. They can't. Part of it is that, but also it's not, what is the word I'm thinking of? Made automatic, where you have to
Yes,
do it all the
repetitive.
time.
Yes.
Yes, repetitive. And because they can't read or they don't read, so they don't spell. And it
Correct.
doesn't get marked. The only time it counts now is if in the languages. But it doesn't count for anything else.
Really?
Yeah.
But I mean,
And-
what is the pass mark now? It's like,
It's going down again. It's just said.
really?
30% for a lot of the subjects. And that is where our problem comes, is that because they're not allowed to retain many children in school, so they're in grade 1, they can't read yet or do maths or whatever, and they pushed into grade 2.
But now it gets harder.
It gets harder,
Yes.
and then
'Cause you don't have that
so they
foundation.
know a little bit, they go into grade 3. Sometimes they will, but you can only be repeat once in a phase. So if you've done a second year grade R, first of all, they can't repeat you again in grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Even if your birthday's on the 30th of December, you then should be in that year.
Okay.
Whereas if you'd had it 2 days later, you would have been in a different grade. So, and I had a child now, 31st of December, and she was born like 10 to 12. So that meant she had to go to school in the year you turned 7. Whereas for
everybody else,
10 minutes,
yes,
she was, so of course she battled.
Okay, because she's younger. She's a year younger than everybody
younger,
else.
Developmentally. Anyway.
Yes. Of course,
So
it
then-
is a lot. The
In the
difference
first-
between a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old is a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So, so then they can't repeat her. So she hasn't got anything. Then she goes into grade 4. Okay, now they can repeat her in the next phase again.
Okay.
So they repeat her. But repeating grade 4 doesn't help.
Because she
Because
doesn't have
that's
the
not
foundation.
going to give you the foundation. So
So you're
rather
saying our
make...
education is completely screwed up.
Totally. Rather make 4 years foundation where they actually know how
Yeah.
to
And I
they've
mean,
got
what-
the 3 R's by the time they
Yes,
leave
yes.
foundation
Read.
phase.
Write with an R and arithmetic with an R. Okay.
Yes.
But I see where you're coming now. It's all foundational as an issue, as opposed to comprehensional. It's all
Yes.
foundational.
There was just an article now that said 70% of children that are battling in, say, grade 1, grade 2, that get help will progress.
Okay.
Only like 2% that are getting help after the age of 12, or say 10%, will make progress. It's got to be on that phase.
Yes. Yes.
And that's where the children...
And that's got to do with the cerebral cortex and its development, hey?
Yes, with everything. All that development, because it's all the different areas developing. Your motor skills, your visual skills, your language skills, your auditory skills. So it's all the areas in the brain that have to develop then.
Mandy, this all sounds so complex. How the hell did we get you as a species? We bred. We didn't need
Yes.
licenses.
We did.
Hey?
We
We
did.
made it in numbers.
I want to mention just one thing with,
Please do.
because a lot of the schools are going on to using tablets instead of textbooks.
Okay.
And also I tested a child, nice IQ, but the one section we test is what we call processing speed.
Okay.
But that isn't like brain processing information.
That's hand-eye.
It's just, yes, information through the eye
to
onto the hand.
Got you.
So, and that, you know what your average IQ is. Same. Maybe I must just, average IQ is 90 to 109.
Oh, yes, okay.
110 to 119 is above average, 120 to 129 superior, 130 above very superior.
Okay.
Okay. And so his IQ was all nicely in the average range, except processing speed was 68, which is cognitively delayed. Because low average is 80 to 89, we call borderline 70 to 79.
Okay.
And below that,
And below that?
cognitively delayed. So his ability to take the information through his eyes and put onto paper was cognitively delayed. In old terms, we used to say retarded.
Wow.
So he, and especially the tablet and the iPad, to try and take this information in, couldn't do.
Why do you think that was
Because
the case?
at least when you've got paper or a book, you can underline, you know where you are, you're getting a better visual picture
Oh, yes, I've got you.
than to try and find your way with everything kind of looking the same when it's electronically, as opposed to writing differently.
I found myself in the last 2 years, I love technology, and everybody knows I'm a tech nerd, right? A complete techie. I love technology. Here's my book. And my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I've got a book. And my clients, when I do sit with my clients, I've got a book.
And this is what they're saying, it's the biggest
Yeah, look at this
problem
thing. It's going to
you
be
can
integrated
give
soon. This pen.
children is by giving them iPads too young.
Really?
Because they're learning no other skills. Flipping through
Yes.
it's also not good for concentration because
The
it's
light's
changing
bad.
so much, and the
Yes.
light's bad.
Yes.
But they're not learning any of the other skills. And
So, let's say for argument's sake now, a happy medium with that then would be to turn around and go, I will let you play a game on the iPad. Because I do think that some of them are good and they are educational. But I'll let you do it for an hour. But then what I want you to do for the other hour is go play outside. Or draw.
that way,
Or
okay.
swim.
The other thing,
or-
the new research coming out of technology is children shouldn't be exposed to more than an hour a day of technology.
Really? And that is iPad?
iPad,
Phone.
everything.
Television?
Well, that
Yeah.
was kind of included, but now television hasn't become so bad anymore
No,
because
no.
of the
Television was the devil.
Yes.
And now technology, cell phones and iPhones are the devil.
But again, they can use television.
Yes.
So when your child's watch something, sit and talk to them about
No,
it.
but good gracious me.
Discuss it.
No, I have...
They all watch cartoon channel.
No, but have you seen the utter bullshit that is that the subliminal messaging, right? That some of these cartoons are saying, like, literally,
Totally. I hate cartoons.
literally, the subliminal message is don't listen to your parents.
Bully. Don't
Bully?
listen to your
What
parents.
the actual fuck
Be
is going on?
aggressive.
Yes.
Fight. Yeah.
Please explain this to me. How is that allowed? How is that happening?
Because nobody, I don't know.
Is it-
That's what they sit and they watch.
Is
so
it
that is what they.
intentional? Why? I mean,
But
It
we've
has
had
to be-
cartoons since
no, but the cartoons were
weren't as bad, but there was
No.
still always aggression.
okay. There was aggression, fair
But
enough.
not all of these other things.
Yes, it's really, really, really
and
bad.
it definitely, and the bullying and all going together and bullying.
Yeah.
Yes,
and,
all of that comes
and
through.
literally disrespect your parents.
Yes, I tell parents don't allow.
Cartoons.
Watch CBBS.
Okay, I
It's-
don't know. Yeah.
It's a children's, but it's all educational
Yes,
things. It's
educational
very
things.
nice.
Yeah.
Watch that, not cartoons. But the research I've just read is they've been doing comparative studies with students taking all the information onto your laptop, sitting in the lecture, typing. It's because you can type quickly and you get it all word for word.
Yes.
And so you've got it. You've got far more written down
Correct.
than somebody that's taken notes.
Writing. Yes.
But taking notes, your brain is already processing because you're writing the important information. So you're not writing word for word when you're taking notes.
Got you.
You're taking ideas and concepts.
Yes.
So already while you're taking
There's a
notes,
filtrate. Yeah, you're filtering out.
and your brain is putting stuff where it needs to be.
Got you.
And the ones that are just typing are just typing. And they did a comprehension thing straight afterwards. And the ones who took notes were far superior and remembered more than
Really?
the ones
Than
who
the ones that
typed their
typed.
things verbatim.
Yeah, I don't yet think we know as a society what technology is going to turn us into
Yes.
long term. Long term. Because yes, there's a lot of positives, but simultaneously I think there's a lot of negatives, you know. When I go see clients and when I'm chasing business, for argument's sake, so somebody phones me to come out in a system and I call chasing business, but I actually go, okay, can I come and see you? And I think there's people want that again, that human
Contact.
interaction. I mean, let me
Yes.
tell you, Mandy, so I've educated you for one thing, which is what is a podcast, okay? And completely understandable because it is a new thing. But podcasting is absolutely massive in the States. Massive, absolutely massive. And I think it harkens back to, I want to hear something real. Mandy, this is one cut, one go, one discussion. However it comes out, that's how it's going out. There's no editing, this is it, it's real, it's live. You know, and I think people want that again. You know, and we're very behind in South Africa in terms of podcasting. But it'll catch.
it'll
We'll
get
catch
there.
them. You know, we're always sort of 10 years behind America or 5 years behind America, you know, in certain things. But I think that's what's missing. And even in relationships, I think that's what's missing. You know?
The word, when I was talking about spelling, was drilling. Things don't get drilled. And I don't know if you've watched in the UK now, they've gone back to drilling tables, times
Okay.
tables.
Oh, okay, old times
That
tables.
you know them off by
yes,
heart?
2, 4, yes.
No, the kids don't know them off by heart anymore.
No.
They don't. Now you're trying to do maths. They can't do maths. They can't multiply.
Yeah.
They can't do division because they don't know their tables.
Mm.
So then you give them a big chart so they can look it up and they can work it out.
Yeah.
Apparently they're going to do away with long division in the schools too soon.
Look,
So-
me and maths are bad. But let me tell you what I can do. I can Excel like a machine, and I can write formulas that most people wouldn't even be able to. But if you look at it, I understand. Excel is very objective, right? It's very logical, and I understand the logic, and I love language. So I can write the formulas, and if I can write the formulas, I don't have to worry about the maths.
Okay.
Do you see? So I do it that way. So I can literally sit and I can
You're
write.
going to have to get over your maths thing if you're going to do stats.
No, Excel. Excel, I can do anything with that you want on stats on Excel.
And if you're in an exam and you've got to do stats, it's from here. It's not on an Excel
really?
program.
Now, am I going to have to do stats if I do my BA in psychology? Oh, thanks.
You do
Thanks
it.
for that.
It's one section, but I don't think maths just the stats counts independently. So
Okay.
it's part of
It's part of.
the bigger. But I'm willing to bet you've got a block about maths.
Probably.
So you come for that IQ, and I'll show you the abilities. If you can, how they test a maths ability.
Yes.
First of all, is you give them a picture.
Mm-hmm.
You use blocks, cubes, either red or white or red and white, and they've got to build it, the same one,
Okay.
from the card.
Okay.
Okay?
So
you can do that.
monkey see, monkey do.
Yes, but now it's from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional.
Okay.
Then the other thing is there's a picture in that row and a picture in that row, and you've got to say which ones are the same. So it'll be a dog and a tree, some kind of tree, and a plate and a different kind of tree. So the two trees are the same.
Okay.
And the next one from that, the non-verbal, is there's a pattern with something missing and options over there. And you've got to work out what it's got to be. If you can do that, that's inductive reasoning. You can do maths. You've got the ability for
Okay.
maths.
I'm sure I could do that. I'm sure I could match the tree
Of
with
course
the
you
tree.
Of course, gets more concept than its
Yes.
designs.
Yes.
But it just means if you can pick up a principle and
And I think-
expand it.
Do you know what I think it came down to?
You can do
I
maths.
I think it came down to two things. ADD, because literally, like you're saying, I picked up portions
missed,
of, and I
yes.
missed the foundation, and bad teaching, right? And I think you're right.
And then you
I think I
develop
just
you block.
I missed the foundation of it. Languages was of course something I absolutely loved, but I mean I could go read. I could go read myself. You know, I love languages. Absolutely love language, and I love reading, and I love writing. I love writing cursive. I've got like 4 different handwritings: print, cursive, a mixture, and then my shorthand, which sometimes I can't even read, which is why I don't do it anymore. Yeah. Okay, we'll try it out, Mandy. We'll definitely try it
Be
out.
surprised, yes.
Yeah. All right, lovely. Mandy, what a flippin' phenomenal discussion we've had. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. We've covered so much.
Oh, we have.
Is there
actually.
anything else that you wanted to add in?
Not at this stage.
Not at this
no.
stage. We're done and
No,
dusted.
I think we have, yes.
What a great discussion, Mandy. Thank you for your time. Everybody, thank you for listening. So long and thanks for all the fish. Thanks, guys. Ciao.
Okay.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that podcast. It really was just such a pleasure to speak to a psychologist with such extensive teaching and life experience. And I really hope you enjoyed the podcast as much as I did. It was such an eye-opener to understand how my OCD is linked to my ADHD, and it was really interesting. I'm looking forward to maybe going and doing the IQ test with Mandy and seeing what happens. As always, this podcast is brought to you by my main sponsor, who is Jared Smith. He's my equipment sponsor and my sound engineer. And for those of you who follow Jared, last year he did a mashup of Snoop Dogg and Eminem and the Beatles, and he's at it again, guys. So all I'm saying is watch the space, because it's about to drop. To Teletrack, my studio sponsor, I'll hopefully be doing 2 or 3 podcasts there this month, which basically talks to the level of guests that I'm going to be bringing on. So it's only going to get better from here. And to be sure, IT, my digital ninjas, they've been hard at work and have added another platform to the mix. In addition to YouTube and the website, as well as iTunes and Stitcher, you can now also find the podcast on Acast. And guys, lastly, if you like the podcast and appreciate the guest, please subscribe to the various channels and drop me a message. I love hearing from you. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day. Ciao.